Live from Waterford and Dungarvan, this is Waterford at 1 News.
Good afternoon, I'm Sinead Aherne. The Taoiseach says there's a very strong likelihood that pubs and restaurants will be closed for New Year's. While in sport, the final preparations are being made at GAA HQ for the Senior Football All-Ireland. The country will enter Level 3 max restrictions shortly after Christmas. The Taoiseach has confirmed the easing of restrictions underway at the moment will be cut short, as our political correspondent Sean Defoe reports.
On the day the travel restrictions have been lifted for the first time in months, all eyes are already turning to the next set of restrictions. With the number of new cases rising, the government will cut short the easing of restrictions that have been planned over Christmas. Instead of lasting until January 6th, new measures will come into place between the 28th and 30th of December. Chief Medical Officer Dr Tony Holohan says the time period needed to be shortened.
That length of time is simply too long. Over the New Year period, the coming together, particularly that socialisation taking place in settings that facilitate people coming together, the use of alcohol in those kinds of settings. Alcohol, let's be honest, is a particular challenge for us in this country.
Taoiseach Micheál Martin says the new measures will be a Level 3 plus.
Non-essential retail will stay open. This is a max level 3 you're looking at. We'll have to watch and monitor that because we want to evaluate, can we maintain some of those services as we move into January, February.
That means that restaurants and pubs that serve food will be closed before the new year. Cabinet ministers will meet on Tuesday to finalise the plans for an early shutdown of the holidays. Sean Defoe, Leinster House.
Cormac Cronin owns the Bodega and Burza restaurants in Waterford City. He spoke to Damien Tiernan on Data today.
I suppose it's kind of expected. We were hoping to get maybe to the 29th or 30th, so we could have 4 or 5 days after Christmas, but the rumours are it is 28th, so there's actually no point opening after Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, for just open for 2 days just to get all the prep and stuff done. It's really not viable.
6 people with COVID-19 are in intensive care in the southeast. 3 patients with the virus are in ICU at St Luke's in Kilkenny. 2 are in critical care at University Hospital Waterford and 1 in Wexford. That's according to the HSE's daily operations update. In total, there were 41 confirmed cases of the virus in hospitals in the southeast last night. The number of cases of COVID-19 doubled in parts of Waterford last week. There were 22 cases in the Dungarvan electoral area during the first 2 weeks of December, up from 10 during the 2-week period that ended on December 7th. Dungarvan was the only local area with an incidence rate above the national average. The number of cases fell in all other areas. There were 18 cases in City East, 14 in Portlaw, Kilmacthomas, and 9 in both Tramore City West and Waterford City South. For the 3rd week in a row, there were fewer than 5 cases in Lismore. People can book a private coronavirus test at Boots Pharmacy in Waterford from today. The COVID-19 PCR testing service will begin from Monday at a cost of €139. It's for individuals who do not display symptoms of the virus. Pharmacist at Boots Ireland is Heather Feeney.
There was an update to government guidance around the 29th of November, meaning that when people were travelling into the country from amber, red and grey areas, that they could reduce their period of restricted movement after 5 days on receipt of a negative PCR test result. So in line with that, we launched the service, seeing that there was a public need for PCR testing for those who are asymptomatic. But since launch, we've actually seen as well that there's been a lot of interest from people who are travelling home from Christmas and who are seeing elderly relatives and people who may be more vulnerable.
There are calls for significant investment in the Viking Triangle and cultural quarter areas of Waterford City. John Cummins made the case in the Sinead for a €48.5 million project to regenerate derelict and underutilised areas. The local authorities applied for €27.6 million under the Urban Regeneration and Development Fund. Senator Cummins says they made an ambitious submission.
Improving public realm on O'Connell Street to the new whisky distillery on Mary Street, the creation of a new linear park on Spring Garden Alley, the creation of a new square called Friary Square with new housing and commercial units at ground floor level. And in total there's 22 separate projects earmarked for investment as part of the plan.
There's been a 5-fold increase in the number of drug drivers in Waterford this year. That's according to Councillor Declan Clune, chair of the Joint Policing Committee here. The Waterford Garda Division's Christmas road safety operation commences today and will continue until January 6th. Councillor Clune says people should expect to see checkpoints over the festive period, particularly in rural areas.
The whole idea is to reduce the incidence of road fatalities and serious injuries over the Christmas and New Year period. So it's starting today, December 18th, and it's running until January 6th. And essentially it's going to be I suppose how we've gotten used to a lot more since COVID and that, but numerous checkpoints and additional patrolling, especially in rural areas.
The British Prime Minister has warned things are looking difficult to agree a post-Brexit trade deal. Negotiations between the two sides are continuing today, with just under 2 weeks until the transition period ends. The EU's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, says there's only a few hours left to find an agreement, describing it as the moment of truth. Boris Johnson believes there are still stumbling blocks to overcome if a deal is to be done.
Our door is open. We'll keep talking, but I have to say that things are looking difficult, and there's a gap that needs to be bridged.
Waterford's Grace O'Sullivan's highlighted the impacts of a no-deal scenario. She spoke remotely from the European Parliament studio in Dublin today about the contingency plans being put in place.
The measures are a bare but crucial minimum in terms of protecting livelihoods and links with our EU partners. But they do not provide any clarity around protection of our waters or our coastal communities and fishers, the men and the women who bring food to our tables.
And the WLR Christmas appeal has raised €42,000 so far. 16,000 of that is from corporate donations made today by the likes of Sanofi, Dawn Meats, Airgen Pharma, Tom Murphy Car Sales and Immersive VR. It's all in aid of the St Vincent de Paul. Paul Nolan is from Dawn Meats.
We know that people are, for the last number of years, have struggled a bit. Certain people, this year the struggle has obviously been even harder. So it's great to be able to say, well, look, we were able to perform, we managed to make a few bob, and it's great then to be able to pass it. Why this particular cause? I think the one thing, with no disrespect to any other charity, when you want to get to the people most in need, the Vincent de Paul are around a long time, and they have this knack of knowing exactly where to take whatever they get and put it into exactly the right hand.
Thousands of people are also taking part in Wear Red Day.
WLR Sport.
With Virgin Media, Georgia Street, Waterford. Wishing all our customers a happy and sporty Christmas.
A very good afternoon from the Sports Desk. I'm Nigel Kelly. We'll start with Gaelic games where Mayo and Dublin are expected to name their teams this evening for tomorrow's All-Ireland Senior Football Championship final. Throw-in at an empty Croke Park is at 5 o'clock. Desi Farrell's side are going in for an unprecedented 6th All-Ireland in a row, while the Green and Red are aiming to end their famine that stretches back to 1951. The former Mayo boss John Maughan says that it'll be a telling where Lee Keegan lines out for them tomorrow evening.
We're stuck for players to fit into our full back line. But the reality is, I think Lee is in the full back line by default, because we're just short. We've lost a couple of guys in the last couple of years. We're just stuck for guys to play in the full back line, and I think that's why Lee is back there. But nonetheless, James Horn might spring a surprise and throw him out around the middle of the field. Who knows?
While Galway and Kilkenny meet at MW Hire O'Moore Park from 7:30 this evening in the semi-finals of the Leinster Under-20 Hurling Championship. The other last of four clash will see Wexford take on Dublin at Netwatch Cullen Park from 8 o'clock. Meanwhile, it's Roscommon and Galway from 7:30 in the Connacht Minor Football Championship semi-final. On to soccer, where Arsenal boss Mikel Arteta says that his first year in charge has been one of the most challenging periods in the club's history. Despite winning 2 trophies at the start of his reign, the Gunners are 15th in the Premier League table. They have a tough trip away to Everton tomorrow evening. However, he says that he's ready to take on the problems they're facing.
It's even more challenging, but it's what we have. At the same time, I'm telling you that I love what I do. I feel so lucky and privileged to represent this football club. And these are circumstances and contexts that in this moment are what they are, and we have to face them because there is no other choice.
And there's one game in the Championship tonight as Preston play Bristol City from 8 o'clock. In rugby, Munster have named their team for their Heineken Champions Cup game tomorrow against Claremont. Waterford's Jack O'Donoghue has been named on the bench by Johan van Gran. Peter O'Mahony will captain the side from the back row alongside Gavin Coombs and CJ Stander, while John Klein and Tyg Burr make up the second row, and is a typical half-back pairing of JJ Hanrahan and Conor Murray, with Damien Dielendy and Chris Farrell in the midfield. On to Formula 1, where Toto Wolff has extended his stay as team principal and chief executive of the Mercedes Formula 1 team for a further 3 years. Meanwhile, earlier today, Mercedes all but confirmed that the world champion Lewis Hamilton will race for them next season. They posted a picture to their Twitter page with the words "announce" and "coming soon." And finally, in racing, there's an 8-race car taking place throughout the afternoon at Navan, and the first of 8 races on the all-weather track at Dundalk goes to post at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Sports news on WLR is thanks to Virgin Media Waterford. WLR asks you to double your efforts to reduce the spread of COVID-19 in Waterford.